In this video, I'm very pleased to report there's a major blow to this government's plans in destroying what is really valuable to this country, and that is the private education that we should be proud of in this country. But it's going to take some explaining. So bear with me. I think you'll enjoy this one. So first of all, please do subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to be hot on the pulse with these things. I'm independent. I will stay so. Please do subscribe and I'll be really grateful. So where do we start? It's about private schools, and it's not that they've been knocked back on the VAT. That is still yet to come, hopefully, because that's going to court. This is something different. Many of you may have missed the bit about the private schools, not just the VAT element, but they were also being hit twice or three times really with the employer national insurance. That's obviously a thing that's coming in. They were hit with the VAT, which is another thing that came in. But also many people missed the charitable rates relief, which for many schools, because obviously they use a lot of buildings, many of you may not know that they have a charitable status rate relief on the buildings that they use. But they also, in adding the VAT and the employer national insurance and everything else, they were also hit with this removal of charitable rates relief on the buildings. And that's where we come to this bit of law here. So for a bit of context and a bit of explanation, this comes from the Local Government Finance Act of 1988. And under charitable rate relief, this essentially means that these schools did qualify for charitable rates relief, which, if this were removed, means that those schools would have to pay hundreds of thousands of pounds a year, some of them, on top of what they already pay for nothing extra. So if they weren't already struggling, which many of them were, and we should be propping them up rather than making them fail, they certainly would be on the brink of failing because of this hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of extra fees that they would have to pay if they lose this charitable rates relief. That's where the extra spiteful, in my view, attitude from this government came from, with the bill that was designed to remove that relief. And that is this one here, the Non-Domestic Ratings Multipliers in Private Schools Bill. Many of you may not have heard of it, but that's exactly what it does. It sought to remove this rates relief from charitable status private schools, another blow that would have made them struggle to survive. Now, this was a long way along. Now, you can see at the bottom here that a bill is what becomes an act of law, and it obviously has to go through both houses of Parliament before it becomes law for royal assent and becomes an act of law. Watch the comment section go crazy now. But it starts as a bill. And so this started in the Commons, House of Commons. It went through the first reading, the second reading, the committee stage, report stage, third reading, and then over to the House of Lords. Now, we're on the third reading of the House of Lords now, but here's where it gets really interesting. There was an amendment moved by Baroness Barron, Amendment 30, which was to leave out Clause 5. So what does that mean? Let's move to, this is the bill as it came across from the House of Commons. Now, we can scroll down to the bit that I highlighted, which is Clause 5. Clause 5 says removal of relief. So this clause in the new bill amends the old law, the Government Finance Act that I showed you a moment ago with the charitable rates relief bit. This amends that law, or would amend that law, that in Schedule 4ZA, in paragraph 2, the bit about charitable rates relief, that's this bit here that I showed you a moment ago. This is Schedule 4ZA. That's paragraph 2 there. You can see, well, you can't really see, it's not zoomed in enough, but there's the charitable rates relief bit. This would amend that to insert after subparagraph 2, but this paragraph does not apply where this is situated in England, and on the day that it's concerned, the heritage element is wholly or mainly used for the purposes of carrying on a private school. And a private school means an institution, which is a school at which full-time education is provided for pupils of compulsory age. Now, that's what I think is abhorrent. What this did, if people hadn't realised, this specifically said we are going to make them pay more money for using the buildings to deliver education to children. It was removing the rates relief from charities that are charitable status. They're not for profit. They are providing education to schools. And I think that's abhorrent to remove or even seek to remove this. The VAT is a separate but similar thing. But they sought to remove this rates relief. So this would have inserted into this act here But this rates relief bit doesn't apply to private schools, so they don't get that relief any longer. However, as I said, the amendment was moved to leave out that clause, i.e. we'll move ahead with the bill but without that clause. This was one of a few, 6, I think, different things that were proposed. And so this was one of them, to leave out that clause. So now the bill, as it's moving forward, is not with this clause 5, removal of rates relief. We move that across. Now the new clause 5 is now the threshold effect, something else entirely. So clause 5 has been removed. So as I said, a huge blow to this government's plans to desecrate the private school sector of this country. This alone would have affected over 1,000 schools, and the House of Lords peers voted overwhelmingly by majority of 91 to remove this provision from that bill that would have ended that tax relief status for those schools. Now, there's been some reporting on this. Baroness Barron reported to say that education should not be taxed. She says, clearly the government does not agree with us, and we've seen this from the egregious introduction of VAT on independent school fees and now with this bill. The former schools minister expressed concerns about political overreach affecting charities, warning that government's actions would create a two-tiered system punishing charities that don't conform to its views. They also argued that ending the tax relief will impact vulnerable children, such as those with special education needs and disabilities. And Conservative peer Lord Shinkwin, who himself has a genetic condition, osteogenesis imperfecta, who was educated at private school, said that the government treating children with SEND as expendable. Said that removing the part of the bill that was set to end the tax relief for these schools is the only way to protect pupils with SEND that attend independent schools, like those that I attended, he says, where the proportion with SEND is much less than 50%. He says the sad fact is, in the government's eyes, the damage to many of these children's life chances seems to be a price worth paying. They are expendable, immaterial, inconsequential collateral damage caught in the crossfire of what appears to be an ideological obsession with punishing anyone they perceive as rich. Yet, many of these children's families are not rich, as I've been saying all along, and the government knows it, but they seem not to care. They seem not to care incredibly about pupils with SEND mental health, which is undoubtedly going to be hurt by the impact of this measure, and branded the measure as deeply damaging and wholly disproportionate, saying that schools could close as a result. And we've seen lots of schools closing as a result of all of these different measures. Some people saying, well, these schools were struggling anyway. Well, that might be the case, but we should be championing these schools and helping them to survive, not slapping them with VAT to make it more difficult for children to go there, slapping them with all the employer national insurance, which every company has been hampered with, and to top it off, removing the charitable rates relief, which they were intending to do, but now has been blocked. So I, for one, think that's a good thing. I think that's a good thing for children across the country, particularly those with SEND and in general, because we shouldn't be taxing education, because that is abhorrent. I hope you agree. You don't have to agree, but please do leave me your comments and thoughts. Please do subscribe to the channel. And as always, thank you for watching.